Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Sherly Dita Hutami from Merdeka Malang University, where I'm responsible for a speaker in this session. In today's presentation, I'd like to tell you why early marriage is terrible, especially for the girls. If there are any questions you'd like to ask, please leave them until the end when I'll do my best to answer them. In today's presentation, I'd like to cover 4 points. First, I'll start with early marriage violates children's rights. Second, it's one of the factors in increasing poverty. Third, it will create education-related consequences. And the last is the effect on health. Now let's begin. Child marriage is a marriage which takes place when both parties are children under the age of 18. Actually, it is more likely to happen to girls. In fact, it occurs more earlier, which is at 7 to 8 years old. Rather, it is uncommon for boys to get to marry before the age of 18. Child marriage affects both girls and boys, but it affects girls disproportionately. Consequences of child marriage have lasting effects beyond adolescence as they struggle with health effects of getting pregnant too young and too often, their lack of education and economic independence, domestic violence, and marital rape. Therefore, I'd like to give you the reasons why early marriage is terrible for girls. Starting with early marriage violates children's rights, including education, freedom from violence, reproductive rights, access to reproductive and sexual health care, employment, freedom of movement, and the right to consensual marriage. Other than that, it also places them at high risk violence, exploitation, and abuse. These consequences impact not just the girl directly, but also her family and community. In this first point, I'd like to focus on the violence, exploitation, and abuse. Almost a third of girl brides get married to a man older than 21. There is an increasing scrutiny of the issues, and more of some of the most shocking examples of girls' exploitation are coming to light. In 2016, a 6-year-old girl was traded to a 55-year-old man in Afghanistan in exchange for a goat. And in 2017, a 16-year-old girl from India was sold to a 65-year-old Omani sheikh. Besides that, early marriage is a threat for children. Marriage is often seen as protecting girls, especially if they are pregnant, but it locks children into often abusive relationships. In many countries, child brides can launch legal action, for example, divorce, or even access refuge, because they're minors. Child marriage is also linked to violence and exploitation. In a 2017 survey of law in 73 countries, it was found at least 9 countries the rapists could avoid punishment if they married their victim, including in Bahrain, Iraq, the Philippines, Tajikistan, and Tunisia. Cases like this draw global attention to practice, but there are still many girls that slip through the net. I think that just about covers violation of children's right of early marriage. Now let's moving on to the poverty as one of the effects of child marriage. Within this context, the girls and women are seen as the potential wage earner. Rather, they are financial burdens to the family and consequently less valuable than boys. For parents with several children or living in extreme poverty, child marriage is simply a way to help elevate the disparate economic conditions. It's one less mouth to feed and one less education to fund. There are so many ways in which child marriage create economic incentive for young girls to be married off early, whether of financial security or gain. Sadly, the practice also tends to trap these girls into a lifetime of economic disadvantage. Poverty is one of the key causes of child marriage, but it's also an ongoing consequence. The chain of poverty continues and in some cases, aggravate poverty in these families. The impact is mostly felt by underage brides, especially in areas with no hope of improvement. With little or no education and skills, most of them remain unemployed. This only increases the rate of dependency and identifies poverty levels. We've looked at the poverty as the key of the effect of child marriage. Moving on to the next part, I'd like to explain why early marriage will create education-related consequences. Child marriage frequently ends girls' education forever. Girls who marry young often expected to take on responsibilities at home that are prioritized over attending school. Child marriage statistics shows that girls who are in school face greater risk of becoming child brides. Girls who have no education are 3 times more likely to marry before the 18 than girls who attended secondary school or higher. A lack of education limits girls' choices and opportunity throughout their life, not just when they are children. The price of this exclusion is often poverty. Without education, girls and adult women have fewer opportunity to financially provide themselves and their families. Research shows how limited education may make girls and women more vulnerable to persistent poverty when their spouses die, abandon, or divorce them. When girls have access to education, they develop the knowledge and confidence to make important life decisions for themselves, including if, when, and who to marry. Even for those in school, early marriage can significantly impact a girl's ability to continue with education. Many are forced to drop out in order to focus on domestic responsibilities or to raise their children of their own. Parents and community may see education as unnecessary for their primary roles in life as wife and mother. So much for education education in child marriage. Turning on to the last point, which is the effect of early marriage on health. Early and forced marriage have devastating consequences on health and development of a girl. It directly threatens the health and well-being of girls. Sexual activity is encouraged even though she is physically and emotionally unprepared for becoming a mother. Complications for pregnant and childbirth are the main causes of death among adolescent girls aged 15 to 19 in developing countries. Girls aged 15 to 20 are twice likely to die in childbirth as those in their 20s. And girls under the age of 15 are 5 times as likely to die. These consequences are due largely to girl physical immaturity where the pelvis and birth canal are not fully developed. Pregnancy for adolescent girls poses poses a serious risk of developing obstructive fistulae since their smaller pelvises make them prone to obstructed labor. Fistula leave its victims with urine or fecal incontinence that causes infection, pain, and a bad smell. A child born to a girl under 18 has a 60% greater chance of dying in the first year of life than one born to women 19 and older. Within a lack of education, many young girls don't have a grasp of their sexual and reproductive health or rights. When they marry to older men, it can be difficult for them to voice their needs, particularly around issues like contraception and family planning. They are more likely to experience domestic violence and exploitation even within the context of a marriage. Well, that's all I have to say about the effect of early marriage on health. That brings us to the end of the final section. Now I'd like to summarize the main points about why early marriage is terrible for girls. Child marriage refers to any formal marriage or informal union between a child under the age of 18 and an adult, common is a boy, or another child, common is a girl. The reasons girls married are diverse, and parents sometimes believe that through marriage they are protecting their daughters and increasing their economic opportunities. At its core, forced child marriage is a fundamental violation of human rights. It seriously harms the development and well-being of girls through limited education and employment opportunity. Social isolation perpetuates a cycle of poverty and gender inequality. For domestic violence and rape, girls are vulnerable to sexually transmitted diseases, including HIV and AIDS, and early pregnancy. In conclusion, we need to end early marriage for the right thing to do. Girls around the world deserve to live full childhoods, go to school, be free of the violence and negative health consequences associated with child marriage, and choose for themselves and without violence and consideration when and whom they marry. Effort of end child marriage and advance of health and rights for girls must be at the center of the global development agenda in order to end extreme poverty and ensure human rights for all. Finally, I'd like to finish by thanking you for your attention and interest. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to leave it on the comment section, and I'll do my best to answer them. Thank you so much for watching, and good morning.